Governor Spencer Cox getting to work, but it's the people who he's picked to work on his administration that will carry the load. And that's a hint as to how the new leader in the state will govern. That's the focus this morning from Salt Lake Tribune's Robert Gehrke.
Yeah, Robert, good to see you this morning. And you're telling us that the governor has some very interesting picks. What stands out to you?
Well, I decided this was a good thing to look at because we didn't really learn all that much about the vision of Spencer Cox, how he's going to actually govern. He doesn't have a long track record as a public official, but the first big decision a lot of politicians make is deciding who's going to be in that inner circle. And so I think we learned a few things from Spencer Cox's picks as he comes into the governor's office. We saw, for example, that he's picked people from all across the state, a lot of geographic diversity that maybe we haven't seen before. You know, they tend to be from maybe Salt Lake, Davis, Utah counties. But he's got, Craig Butters, his agriculture secretary, all the way up in Cache County, all the way down to John Pike, who's a former mayor of St. George. So he's got north to south. His corrections boss is from San Pete County. So you get he also picked people who weren't necessarily in state government. They weren't products of state government. He's got two former mayors. He's got, for example, a lot of former legislators, which could come in handy, I think, down the road. He's got Dan Hemmert running GoEd, Sophia DeCaro running his Office of Management and Budget for former legislators. Deidre Henderson, obviously, is his lieutenant governor. And so you kind of start seeing that he's got these people who aren't necessarily of state government, but are familiar with state government and representing a lot of diverse parts of the state. He's also got a lot of women. You got to give him credit for hiring a lot of women, I think, in his cabinet. Most of the cabinet is white, but I think he also told me when I talked to him about this that it's an issue that he hopes to be able to address to get a more ethnically diverse cabinet down the road.
One of the decisions also that surprised me as well, I agree with you, it was kind of a surprising choice for the former executive director of the Utah Clean Air Partnership as his energy advisor. And when you think urban, or suburban, you're not necessarily thinking about clean air initiatives and those kinds of things. You're thinking about oil, you're thinking about coal and gas, things like that.
Well, and especially considering Spencer Cox is a rural Utah product. He's a product of rural Utah. He's from San Pete County. He's had this affinity with the county commissioners. And a lot of times in the past, this energy advisor position has been a position that's more focused, as you said, on oil, gas, and coal and developing those assets. Whereas now he's made this linkage, which I think is a good linkage to be making, between the energy that we use and the air that we breathe. And I think it brings a different perspective than we've seen in the past in that office in some ways. And he's made a couple of these choices. Tom Ross is the former Bountiful police chief, for example, and Tom is going to be heading the Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice. That's a position that's typically, over the last 35 years, frankly, been handled by an attorney, somebody who's had either defense experience or prosecutorial experience, or in some cases, former judges. This is a departure because it brings a law enforcement perspective to that position. Now, Spencer, when I talked to him about this, said, he understands that, they need to bring law enforcement into these discussions about our criminal justice system. But he also thinks Tom has an understanding and a perspective that will allow him to bridge the gap between the the defense side of things, the rehabilitation side of things, and the law enforcement side of things. So we'll watch that as it unfolds.
I know Governor Cox mentioned that one of his top priorities is this COVID-19 response with the vaccination rollout. Any inkling as far as cabinet picks on who he is selecting to kind of head that up? I know it's kind of already in progress, but if there's anything more on the horizon that we can anticipate.
Yeah. So it seems like for now, at least, a lot of the team stays intact. He's got Rich Saunders, a holdover from Gary Herbert's health department. Angela Dunn, obviously, is staying in place. So not a lot of changes there, but we did see late last week, when he started making these announcements on the vaccination schedules, that there are some distinct differences between the tack that we had been taking and the way that he wants to move. And I, in my mind, I think it's a good idea to sort of really ramp up these vaccinations. As he said during his news conference last week, there's no point having vaccinations sitting on the shelf, and so he's really going to accelerate that. It sounds like, and I think it's overdue.
Well, Utah's got a great future. It's interesting to look at these leadership choices here. So thanks a lot, Robert Gehrke. The column is in saltlaketribune.com.